Professor Battle said.
Claim it.
I'm manifesting it for him. My name is Layla Farhat, and I'm so honored to be here on this beautiful day. It's kind of cold out, but it's still beautiful, I think. Yes, my name is Layla Farhat. I'm an undergraduate student here at USF, and over the course of a year and a half, I've been working on an archival research project focused on St. Augustine, Florida, and the civil rights movement. My work is not primarily focused on education, but my research reflects the stories of Black life and the importance of these stories within education. Now, before I get started, I would like to give my thank yous and my shout outs to my mentors who have brought me to this point. So first, I'd like to thank Dr. Ponton, Dr. David Ponton III, who could not be here today, but he kind of helped me start this project and begin this project and tell me all I know about the archives. So yes, and then also to Professor Battle, who stepped in after Dr. Ponton left. You've been great, and you've had my back the whole time. And of course, my parents who are here today as well. And my sister. They are 100% my backbone, and to my friends and my professors as well, thank you. So yes, let's get started on the project. So I've titled the project The Social Construction of Nation, Domestic Space, and Innocence, White Supremacist Violence, and the Black Refusal in St. Augustine, in the St. Augustine Civil Rights Movement. So I'd first like to prime us with this scene from 1964. This is on June 18th, and this is where James Brock, the owner and manager of the Monson Motor Lodge Motel in St. Augustine, poured acid into the motel pool filled with youth, and he claims within the videos that he wanted to cleanse the pool. Now the pool was filled with about 7 black and white demonstrators. White men are gathered, which you can kind of see in that middle photo, around the pool to view the spectacle of violence that was about to be enacted. A white off-duty police officer, which you can see jumping in, jumps into the pool, and as he jumps in, cheers arise from the white crowd. Cheers like no other. Cheers sounding like a miracle had just occurred in front of their eyes. Cheers of relief, cheers of freedom. Now, the officer proceeds to tackle one of the white demonstrators, jumping on his head, attempting to drown her. The rest of the demonstrators were dragged roughly from the water. This event was not a mistake, or accidental, or a miscalculation. It represented the foundational aspect of racial tension and companion violence of St. Augustine. The integrated group was protesting the horrid and absurd racial discrimination that was not only integral to the survival of the exclusive nation, but also the maintenance of a white home. Brock pouring acid into the pool was the conceptualization of public space within the white imaginary. Public space to white segregationists was an extension of their home. Moreover, the violence enacted against the youth questioned the inherent idea of innocence among children. So here we're questioning the idea of innocence amongst children because, again, we think of children as innocent, yet all of this proves and questions that. So my paper's argument in general aims to understand the deep civil rights history of St. Augustine through the lens of Black children and Black families to tell a different story not yet told through the scholarship. Scholarly attention to St. Augustine and the civil rights movement has produced an understanding towards local conditions, including civil rights leaders and actions done by civil rights organizations like the NAACP. The paper argues that the violence enacted against Black Floridians by white supremacists indicated the extent to which the white nation, both seen as an idea and as represented in physical spaces, was scared, and seen in need of protection from the threat of integration. Additionally, the white nation constructed the boundaries of a nation. I kind of maybe forgot to change the slide, but it's okay. So the paper argues that the violence enacted against Black Floridians by white supremacists indicate the extent to which the white nation, both as an idea and as represented in physical spaces, was scared and seen as needed protection from the threat of integration. Additionally, the white nation constructed the boundaries of a nation through violence, unjust legislation, and terror against Black children, and the regular bombing of Black people's homes, schools, and churches. In response, Black citizens in St. Augustine became more confrontational, making claims to space within a nation, that they had been defined by racial exclusivity. So as we can see, the themes of nationhood, domesticity, claims to bodily integrity, freedom, innocence, and place are all being questioned here. And to formulate this argument, I used works of Michael Trujillo to understand nationhood and the works of Amy Kaplan to understand domesticity. Okay, so denying the innocence of Black children. So now I transition into showing you guys just two prime examples into how I formulate my argument. And this argument is first seen in the scene that I kind of primed us with James Bragg and the violence enacted on innocent youth. However, it continues throughout St. Augustine, and you can see this in the summer of 1963, so about a year before the pool incident that I just showed happened. Police officers, St. Augustine police officers, arrested 16 youth for engaging in peaceful protests at a Woolworth's lunch counter, demanding to be served like their white counterparts. Samuel White, Audrey Neal Edwards, Joanne Anderson, and Willie Singleton were 4 out of the 16 juveniles who police officers arrested. Judge Charles Mathis of St. Johns County placed an ultimatum on them and demanded their parents to sign away their rights, their children's rights, to demonstrate, and will place a curfew on the children. The St. Augustine Four were a prime example of resilience within the civil rights movement and how its actions and how its impact and experiences surpass generations. Moreover, the experiences enabled us to understand the borders of the nation. The incidents of the St. Augustine Four are a clear indication of who was considered human or not, and who was considered a part of the youth. Now, the humanity and innocence of Black children was not accepted within the law, and their rights were directly infringed upon. Now, these parents did not accept the exclusivity of the nation. The mother of Samuel White, who was one of the 4 who were arrested, Hattie White, fought for her place within the nation, a space for her children, for her and her children to feel safe and protected. White sent a letter to the executive secretary of the NAACP, Roy Wilkins, which I actually found through microfilm while looking in the archives, which is really cool to explore. But that is the letter. And she sends a plea to the executive secretary to send help to St. Augustine, to help the Black population find a space to live within the walls of St. Augustine. White expressed in her letter that she had never heard of any child being taken away from their parents for wanting their freedom. And she questions Roy Wilkins, have you? Here, White makes a claim to domestic space within the nation. She questions the very basis of innocence. The child was fighting for their freedom, the freedom to move around the nation like it was their home. Her child was stripped from their inherent humanity and innocence. Age and innocence did not stop the nation or the law from claiming them as property. White was trapped in a paradox that had vexed Black people since they were defined as property. On one hand, because the law did not recognize them as people, they were stripped not only of the law's protections, but also the value of social norms upon which the execution of the law hinged. Freedom was not necessarily democracy, but rather a space within the borders of the white nation, a home, a means of living, a life of safety, and a means of autonomy. Now, this next story is what I've titled, Good for Whoever Planted the Bomb, and it's impactful. I actually took a trip called Journey Towards Justice as a part of a class, and this is where I actually made the initial connection between the 16th Street bombing in Birmingham, Alabama, and a Klan rally that had happened in St. Augustine. So prior to me going to Birmingham, I actually only focused on the St. Augustine Klan rally because that's all I had. And then I kind of had this revelation in Birmingham where I was like, wait, that happened like 2 days before. Oh, okay. So that is what this is kind of priming us for. So, for those of you who don't know, the bombing on the 16th Street Baptist Church on the morning of September 15, 1963, killed 4 little girls. Through the eulogy delivered by Dr. Martin Luther King, the feeling of frustration, anger, and confusion can be seen to resonate within the Black community. And that same feeling was still present when we visited the church as a class. We were angry, we were frustrated, we had that sense of sadness. It was known that day that it was the the church's youth day and a day for Black children to have space to live, to have fun, to be children, to have that space. And yet the white nation simply could not accept that. They felt so threatened that they not only bombed the church, but they accepted it and then rallied for it. Thus the question arose, how could this happen to four little girls, four little pieces of innocence? In the words of Dr. King, four sweet princesses. 3 days later, on September 18th, the funeral for three of the four girls was held, with 4,000 people in attendance. The bombing of the four little girls moved people, moved communities, moved civil rights leaders, and as a result, also moved the KKK. The impact of the bombing and following events, such as the funeral and the eulogy, transcended the city limits of Birmingham, leading to an uprising of white supremacist groups such as the KKK. Hours after the eulogy, 530 miles away, an impromptu rally would be held in St. Augustine, Florida, in retaliation to the massive support from the funeral. Self-styled minister from Alabama, Connie Lynch, was set to present a speech to the white nation. Lynch and his words set a foundation for the horrific events that evolved that evening. Lynch dehumanized the killing of the four girls in Birmingham. With pride, he says to the congregated white mass, "So I'll kill them all. If there's four little less N-words tonight, then I say, good for whoever planted the bomb, we're all better off." Lynch goes on to defend white violence and the four girls killed. He says, "They weren't children. Children are little people, little human beings, and that means white people. There's little monkeys, but you don't call them children. They're just little monkeys." And he goes on, "There's also little N-words, but they ain't children. They're just little N-words." Then, they didn't see them as children, much less human. They saw them as less than animals. No lies behind those faces, no one person is capable of surviving black skin, thus making them not human. They did not belong to the nation, nor even into their home. Lynch then shifts to one person who was primarily my main focus of this research, but as we can see, that quickly shifted. So Lynch focuses on Dr. Robert B. Haling, the youth council advisor to the NAACP. And within this position, Haling was directly threatened and attacked at his home and his work on multiple occasions. He was a threat to the white nation and the maintenance of the white home. Lynch starts, "He ain't got no right to live at all." Haling simply wanted freedom for his people, for his family, for his children, and his companions. Haling desired that his children be seen as that, children, and not to be terrorized by the actions of whites. And for that, Lynch believed that Haling had no right to live, no right to a home, no right to private space, to peace or tranquility. Only hours after MLK delivered the eulogy and minutes after the speech by Lynch, would Haling and three other black men be attacked by the white nation. Haling was meticulous, and he was thoughtful, and he saw a reason for being at the Klan rally that was held 3 days after. And while the reason wasn't explicit, I never found, Haling's diary or anything. I never saw why he went there. But I understood why he went there through the actions of MLK, through the eulogy, and through the feelings of other leaders during that time. He was there in response for the killing of four little girls. Haling and his companions were dragged onto the stage for the whole crowd to witness the terrifying beating that the men were about to experience. The crowd cheered on, probably with the feeling of hope that one day they would be free from the blacks. Cheers sounding like a miracle had just occurred in front of their eyes, cheers of relief, cheers of freedom. Maybe the same cheers that were heard at the Monson Motor Lodge pool not a year later. And now we go into a little conclusion. Oh, maybe? Okay. Sorry. So the state, and by direct association with the nation, form the basis of who is or is not considered human, legitimate, and a citizen. The violence of black folk thus protects the white segregationist home. The competing definition of democracy proceeds to get wrapped up in an attempt of white Americans to monopolize who gets defined as members of a nation. The blacks stood in opposition of democracy. The fictitious nation was a barrier to safety of the black community and a justification for the perpetual violence. The conflation of whiteness with nationhood has significant consequences. as seen in Nazi Germany, apartheid South Africa, Jim Crow United States, and the genocide in Palestine. And yet, the white nation's image of itself as universal and progressive failed to account for the wanton violence, its economic instability, and its political inequality. There's a violence in the imaginary of another, there's a violence in the denaturing of another. And insofar as Americans assume that the nation is a simple fact defined by an innocent democracy, that all its legal citizens are a part of a nation and have access to justice, the nation will continue to turn its eyes to violence and its ongoing practices of racial segregation, and its specific exclusion of Black people from the idea of a human family. Thank you.
My question really is, what inspired you to dive into this work? And my comment really is, I like the way that you framed nationhood with personhood or white nation. I like that discussion because I think it can catapult itself to the global issue of colonization with this War Nation of Black Lives. But anyway, how did you come into this work is really my question.
Yeah, so I actually started I was put in Racism in American Society with Dr. Leahy, and she's phenomenal. And she just exposed so much because, you know, in K through 12, we don't, especially in Florida, we don't have that kind of education. So just like, here's how slavery actually went. And I went, oh, okay, okay. And then after that, I had taken a class with Dr. Simone Jones, who's actually in the back. And after that, she really tied the Black experience to understanding the human experience as well. And that's where I got to thinking, well, exploring the Black experience is also similar to exploring other minority experiences, especially Palestinians. I am Palestinian, so I think that is also how I kind of got into the work. So I think that is a main reason to why I also got into the work. And then I took a class with Dr. David Hutton, Intro to Black Experience, and from there, he told me to write a 2-page reflection paper. It became 11 pages. And from there we were like, okay, this has to be a big paper. So now we've created a 22-page paper. And again, he's a historian, so I fell in love with the archives, and here we are. I hope that answered your question.
Talk to them about, because you made a lot of connections on the trip. Can you talk about how important history is to where we are today and the connections that you made as a Palestinian young woman?
Yeah, I think, so I believe the only Palestinian on the trip, or the only like, hey guys, I'm Palestinian. So we were on the bus, and just every time they'd ask us a question, I'd be like, so from like a Palestinian's perspective. Going through places like the Equal Justice Initiative, they have a legacy museum. It's 4 parts. It's like $5 to get in. So if you're ever in Alabama, go there. But you walk through and you get like this instant rush of information, just constant. Like you walk through just information about slavery, segregation, and mass incarceration. They're big things kind of creating that pipeline. And from there, I really, like, it hit me that like history's still happening today. It's just different. So I also have read Realist Equal Preservation Through Transformation, and that's what's constantly going into my head. So if you have time, read that as well. But this connection from segregation to slavery to segregation to mass incarceration, and then it continues today. And for me as a Palestinian, I see it continuing in my own country. I see apartheid continuing. I see segregation continuing. I see the mass I can see the word, but I can't say the word. But like, you see it happening today. You see the fundamentals of violence still continuing today. You just see it. And once you dive deep into history, you can't stop making the connections. You really can't. Yeah.
Thank you for your presentation.
How was that in terms of finding the materials in an accessible way? Were you able to fill in the evidence gaps the way you wanted to, or did you have to go into different archives, et cetera, to find the answers you were looking for?
I love that question. So I actually started at the USF Library Archives. I pulled out, I can't remember the files, but I believe I pulled out a lot of Klan files. And we also have files from like the Southern Poverty Law Center, and they used to do a plan watch, which was just like a whole list of like what was happening. Like, if you have time, go pull those out. Those are so cool. But I just sat there for like hours, and again with the directory of my mentor, which was great. But then from there, I actually this all came about from like one like news clipping, and I had the title was like 4 whites were injured or whatever, but then the actual substance was, oh no, 4 blacks were really badly injured. I was like, okay. So that's what I kind of presented to Dr. Klein, and he was like, wait, who's this Robert B. Hailing guy? He's like the NAACP Youth Council advisor. So then he looks him up, and like 3 files pop up, and then I go down a rabbit hole, and then like I find more things. But my main basis for this was the St. Augustine Civil Rights Library digitally is where you can find all of this. So I was grateful that I didn't have to go to St. Augustine, and like all this was digital. What else? I think that's kind of my main thing. I will say the public library in downtown, the John F. Germany Library, has a massive array of microfilm. That's where I also, so the letter we had found through like NAACP, I think they were like papers or something, and Hattie Lee White's letter was in the microfilm, which was so cool to use. But yeah, if you want my Instagram or email, we can talk about how to use microfilm if you haven't used it before. Like it's I love microfilm. But I hope that answers your question. Oh, Miss Nikki. Oh, I'm excited.
I said, thank you for your presentation, and how is this gonna help you create advocacy for yourself and for others now that you've done the research?
Yeah, so that's actually a great question. So I guess one of the ways is I do want to continue my research. I have applied to PhD programs in history. And I've also accompanied this. I've also created a video documentary, and I do want to try to continue those. If you go onto the USF Institute on Black Lives YouTube, you're welcome, promotion. My video, along also the other students who were on the trip, did some videos as well that also dive deep into history. So I've also recognized the importance and the beauty of opening my paper, because this is so academic. Like this is so hard for people to understand, and no one's gonna sit there reading a 22-page paper. So I do want to transition also into using video formats so that people can understand this and have it be more accessible. But yeah, I hope that answers that question. And I believe I'm out